Since the running back position took another L on Monday, figured who better to have on my main man Michael Smith than you pod to win the game. Charles Robinson, Charles McDonald from Yahoo Sports, obviously plugged into all things NFL like few others around the country. Guys, I got to be honest, like, and y'all know I'm pro-labor, and I'm all for players getting their paper. But C-Rob, starting with you, I'm watching, everybody tweet through it. I'm watching all the running backs rally. I'm watching them, march on the collective NFL office, and seem like they're about to stage a walkout or a boycott or something. But I'm like, I don't have much sympathy for them because I don't think there's some kind of grand conspiracy. I don't think there's some kind of something sinister going on here. This is just smart business on the part of teams, and frankly, it's nothing new. This is Bill Parcells saying don't draft a running back until the fourth round. This is running backs year after year, this year being the exception, not going in the first round, going in the second round at the earliest. This is running back by committee. All of this was inevitable, and frankly, it's the way teams should treat the position, Charles Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like group therapy right now on social media. We got all these dudes out here crying about, being devalued and we're important. And there's nobody out here saying running backs aren't important or that the running game isn't important. But I mean, the economics of the NFL, they are what they are, and it's always changing. I can remember when I started covering the league, I remember listening to a general manager once tell me about a very, very good offensive lineman, letting him go. Well, he's just a guard. I mean, that was a mentality in the NFL. Guards didn't mean shit. Centers didn't mean shit. There's always been players in the NFL. It's a roller coaster. It lives and breathes. It goes up and down, who are going to be valued, devalued. It'll change over time. And look, I'll just say this. I thought about this yesterday. What was the last NFL team that won a Super Bowl with a primary running back who you would consider like a top five guy, like a must-have centerpiece running back?
So Marshall Faulk just comes to mind, but it might have been somebody more recent. I don't know. But I would just.
Is it like 2013 Seahawks?
It would have been like Marshawn Lynch, right? It would have been when the Seahawks. I mean, and I'm talking about and Marshawn wasn't the best running back in football that year, but I think you would have put him, in the upper tier of that. But that's a while, okay? I mean, you're talking about basically 10 years since the last time an NFL team, and then now go down the list. I'll do this right now, actually, because I was doing this while we were prepping for this. Here's the rushing leaders. Okay, let's go down the list for the last however many years. Josh Jacobs, 2022.
Yeah.
Right, for Vegas. Jonathan Taylor, Indianapolis. Derrick Henry, back-to-back years. Good Titans teams never sniffed the Super Bowl, right?
No.
Ezekiel Elliott in 2018. Kareem Hunt in 2017. Yeah. Ezekiel Elliott again. Adrian Peterson. DeMarco Murray. LaShawn McCoy in 2013 for Philly. Adrian Peterson. Maurice Jones-Drew. Arian Foster. Chris Johnson. Adrian Peterson. I mean, LaDainian Tomlinson in 06 and 07.
And then conversely, look at the teams that have won the Super Bowl and who's their leading rusher and what they're investing in that position.
Right. It's a like the MVP award, and everybody complains about this. Everybody bitches it's a quarterback award, right? Oh, it's a quarterback award. Only because it's a quarterback league. Okay. And when I did a piece on Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley weren't going to get their deals done, right? I talked to an agent who had done a lot of big running back deals, right? And he wanted to be anonymous as hell because he's got running back clients still. But he was like, he literally said about doing running back contracts, he said it's catching a falling knife. Like it's a shit situation. It's going to be bad. Doesn't matter how dominant your guy is or not. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said the league right now, it's about maximizing quarterbacks. You're paying quarterbacks all this money, and teams, general managers, head coaches do not look at running backs as being quarterback maximizers the same way that they look at wide receivers being quarterback maximizers. And he's like, that's why you're seeing the salary scale flying in opposite directions. Wide receivers, we're talking number 1 wide receivers, number 2 wide receivers. And now typically the 3rd wide receiver is a highly drafted asset. He said, you're seeing all the money and the assets pour into that position, and running back is the opposite. You're not seeing the money and the assets pour in that. If anything, it's becoming more of, a room, a committee, a rotation. And he said it has everything to do with the quarterback.
Charles McDonald, does your heart go out to these poor running backs who are putting their heart on the line, their heart and soul on the line, and not being appreciated? They're not being, where's the love? Fullbacks like, hey man, where y'all been all this time?
Well, we can get the fullbacks. That's just, running backs, they're putting it all on the line for the good of our country, right? They're out there in the trenches and really, really trying. Okay. There's 2 sides to look at it, because I feel like there are some people who will bring bad faith nonsense into it. Like, oh, well, why are you crying about these guys like getting millions of dollars? Like, that's not it. It's the facts to me. Yeah, that's right. It's all relative. And I think the biggest thing for me is like, you're spending so much of your prime either playing for free in college or playing on a controlled rookie contract, that I think when you look at guys like Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs this year, and to Tony Pollard to a lesser extent, part of the problem is it's so hard for these guys to even hit free agency before it's time for them to, look at becoming like a backup running back later in their career. Because let's take Saquon Barkley, for example, right? He plays 3 years at Penn State, balls out. Obviously, whatever cash he's getting there is not equivalent to an NFL salary. He lucks out, ends up as a 2nd overall pick in his draft, which kind of makes him one of the highest paid running backs in the league right off the start. And as he's playing, the 4 or 5 years that he's locked into that contract with New York, the value of those running back contracts just keeps going down and down and down. So by the time that we're in this spot and he's able to think about hitting free agency, you're slapped with the franchise tag, which means you're still kind of stuck in the same spot that you were before. And we're dealing now with a franchise tag for running backs, which is $10 million, which is, it's nothing compared to the other positions. And you look at it from both sides. If you're a team, well, yeah, I think getting Saquon Barkley for 1 year at $10 million is a pretty good value. And you look at from the other side, if you're Saquon Barkley, you've already put all these miles on your body and quite literally kind of carried the Giants to playoffs last year. There's no way you can agree to sign and stay for 1 year, because you're playing a position where you don't know what it's going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now. You don't know if you're going to take a hit where your body could dissipate a little bit. So I feel for the guys. It's a tough situation, but I really think it's just like the inability to hit free agency that causes a lot of this strife.
Well, I'll tell you what it's going to look like a year from now for Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, and to a lesser extent, Tony Pollard, who signed his tenure. Tender, I beg your pardon. Jacobs and Barkley are unsigned at the moment. 2005, Edgerrin James, he played on the tag, 404 touches. 2005, Sean Alexander played on the tag, 385 touches. And, of course, 2017, Le'Veon Bell on the tag, 406 touches. So what it's going to look like is if these dudes play on this one-year tag, they going to have another 400 touches of mileage on their bodies, and their value will only continue to decrease the older they get and the more wear and tear on their body. But honestly, this is why, hey, man, get your paper, do what you got to do, huff and puff, blow the house down, whatever it takes to get people's attention. But it's not going to change because, Charles, not only is it a quarterback-driven league, but you don't need a running back as much as you need a running game, and
right.
We've long since graduated from the days of having one workhorse running back. And even if teams feel like they have a workhorse running back, they go and they draft one. Hi, Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, for example. It's like nobody wants to. It's so crazy the amount of mixed messages because it's like, okay, we got a running back And if there's a lot of mileage on them, we're not going to pay them, but they're also not going to last. So let's go get multiple running backs to have specializations. Maybe it's a passing down back. Maybe it's a first and second down back. Maybe it's a guy that's better in pass pro. Maybe it's a guy that's better catching the ball. You know, it's like, oh, we don't want to draft running backs early, but you're the Atlanta Falcons and you have 1,000-yard running back that you hit on in the 5th round, and then you go take one in the top 10. It's like there's still a value for the position, but you're not putting sustained value into one guy over and over again. And I don't think there's any change in it, nor do I think it makes sense to change it if you're a team, Charles Robinson. It's proven to be smart business to draft running backs late, if at all. Right. You could even find them in the undrafted running back, as the case may be, and to not give them second and third contracts. It's harsh. And I think it was Matt Miller put this out yesterday, and the likes of Austin Eckler and Najee Harris, they all basically like converged on this one tweet about the obvious way that you handle running backs. Draft them late, run them into the ground, tag them, draft another one. Sorry, that's just the nature of the position. And if you don't like it, right, you might want to find another position earlier in your career.
It's the same reason why when you go to buy a car, you don't go buy a car from a rental car agency. Okay? You don't go to Hertz and go, yo, you got any cars for sale? I want to buy a car.
I actually did that once. Wait, listen, quick sidebar. Okay. I had a Nissan Maxima that was a demo car, and it had 5,000 miles on it already.
Those are the hardest 5,000 miles that were ever ridden in the history of cars, because everybody beats the shit out of rental cars. You don't care. You drive the hell out of those things. You drive over curbs. You do all kinds of crazy shit. You do not see a rental car that's got 15,000 miles on it. It does not look good, okay? Because people are not caring for it, okay? That's what the running backs. The NFL's a lifespan league, okay? All we do is we calculate how short NFL careers are. We all sitting here know the typical lifespan or prime for positions in the NFL. You know, wide receivers, you're going to time out after 32, okay? Yeah. Running backs, we know you start getting into your late 20s, the end is coming. Quarterbacks now, we're like, oh, you know what? The best ones, we can get these dudes to 40, okay? Yeah. Offensive linemen, you know, your early 30s, you know, but if you're elite, maybe you can go to your mid-30s, you know, and it all gets adjusted for injuries and different things that happen during the course of a career. But I think everybody knows running back is a short-time position because of the punishment in the NFL. No one wants to sink that second contract into running backs anymore because of the injury history. And look, with all due respect to Saquon Barkley, I know he wants his money, but I also know the Giants wanted him on the field when he couldn't be. And I understand that, you know, injuries happen. I'm not going to sit here and say players should go out and destroy themselves when they're injured and not be on the field. But you have to know when you're coming for that second contract, a team is sitting there looking at you thinking, what was your availability on the first contract? Well, geez, it's not great. So now we're going to sink long-term money into
not a good precursor for the next contract.
Yeah. Listen, honestly, Christian McCaffrey, lucky. He's lucky he got what he got in terms of the follow-up deals, all the money that he got after his first contract. Because when you would talk to other teams, all they would say about Christian McCaffrey prior to him being acquired from the Carolina Panthers by the 49ers, other teams were reticent. They're like, yeah, he's a great player when he's on the field, but how often is he going to be on the field? Like, he's always hurt. He's always a soft tissue injury away from you not having him for a couple of games or maybe a season. Like, who knows? It just gets factored in at the position. And I don't know, man. There's a lot of crying right now about what we all know the facts are, what's obvious. Okay. People are reacting to what is out there, what is naturally happening at the position. Are we just supposed to pretend that running backs all last 10 years? Are we just supposed to pretend that they're winning MVPs and they're, 2,400 yard, rushing and receiving guys anymore? No, that's not the league anymore.
But Charles McDonald, like, it's not just that. The supply far outweighs the demand in a league where, okay, Saquon Barkley, great running back. Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing, right? Tony Pollard, obviously, he's kind of on the back burner right now because he actually signed his tender, as we mentioned. But it's like, meanwhile, you got Dalvin Cook on the street. You got Ezekiel Elliott or whatever's left of him on the street. You got Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt chilling, and you have all these young running backs coming in, this influx coming in. It's like the harshest thing in the world because we've all been told this by executives or management at some time, and the shit sucks. But, or either been told it explicitly or implicitly that there's a lot of people outside that will do your job in a second, right? Nowhere is that more true than with a running back. There's a whole bunch of dudes we can get to do this job. And here's the other part. There are so many coaches, specifically from that Kyle Shanahan tree, Mike McDaniel comes to mind, that feel like they can, and rightfully so, scheme a running game, Charles McDonald, around any running back and make them superstars in their system. That's the other thing that doesn't help this position.
Yeah, I think for those guys, it's true. Like if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I think one of the interesting things about him is like every couple of years, he'll get infatuated with the running back in the draft that gets outperformed by an undrafted guy that he found, just kind of sitting around on the street.
Right.
The Joe Williams.
Don't get drafted in the third round by Kyle Shanahan.
Shanahan, it's over for you. It's over for you. But, I if you're one of those guys, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, maybe Sean McVay to an extent, yeah, sure. Go out and get any running back. But what I would say to the Giants is I think this situation is a little bit different because of how your team is constructed. Because if I'm Saquon, I'm saying, okay, that quarterback you just paid $40 million to only threw 15 touchdowns last year. We all know who was the actual driving force of that offense. And when you look at the Giants and their percentage of big plays, almost none of them came from the passing game. They all came from the running game. I think when you have it's hard to find these guys, right? Because when you look at the running back position, there's a lot of overlap, right? There's a lot of guys trying to make the NFL that are between, let's call it 5'9", 6'1", 180 pounds to 220 pounds. It's not really hard to find a guy in that body type. But when you have someone who's liable to go like 80 yards anytime to touch the ball, also big enough to hold up in pass protection, run between the tackles, I think that does change the math for you just a little bit. Because I was a little bit surprised that they played the hardball with Saquon so much, because if you look at that team, where else is the scoring coming from? Where are the points coming from? It's not Daniel Jones wasn't the driving factor for that offense. A lot of the stuff he did, especially in the run game, was a benefactory of having Saquon Barkley next to him. So I think there are cases where there's outliers. The Raiders, it's like, whatever, you're so far behind the rest of the division. I'm not sure having Josh Jacobs is moving the needle for you. But if you're a team that's in contention in trying to win the NFC East that made it to the divisional round last year, why would you not? Why would you handicap yourself in such a severe way? Which I actually think this is a huge problem for them if they don't have him back for the season.
Well, a couple of things just said that brought some things to mind. One, talk about the evolution of the game being a quarterback league. It's not just a passing league, but so many more quarterbacks, including Daniel Jones, even if he was benefiting from Saquon Barkley's presence, are more a part of the running game. And for years now, the short passing game has been an extension, if not a replacement, for the running game in many respects, going back to the schematics. But Charles Robinson, I want to go back to something you said earlier about QB maximizers. And here's the part where I do cape up for the running backs a little bit and go back to that mixed messages point I mentioned about, we don't value them, but, even if we have a 1,000-yard rusher that we hit on the fifth round, we'll take, a special guy like Bijan Robinson in the top 10, Jahmyr Gibbs for that matter. The one big knock on rookie running backs is whether or not they can pass protect early on. And really, that might be as important a role for a running back as there is in the NFL is pass protection. And so when you say quarterback maximizers, or people tell you that quarterback maximizers are not necessarily running backs the same way they are wide receivers, or for that matter, even tight ends, what happened to the old adage of a running back or running game is a quarterback's best friend, or having a running back who's proficient in pass pro being so critical, or a safety valve check down option? So why aren't running backs seen as quarterback maximizers in the way that wide receivers are, given all the dirty work that running backs have to do to keep the team on schedule?
Right. Because you can scheme for blocking, and you're not again, with the wealth of running backs that are available, you can find a running back who's proficient in pass pro, who doesn't have to cost you a ton of money. Okay. We're sitting here talking about Saquon Barkley and, the centerpiece he was for the Giants. Well, when the Giants got mollywopped by the Eagles in the playoffs, guess who the leading rusher was in that game? Kenneth Gainwell beat the brakes off of the Giants. Kenneth Gainwell.
Damn offensive line.
Kenneth Gainwell ain't out here getting some huge contract, okay? And as you said, you pointed at the offensive line. You can scheme and build it to protect a quarterback in a different and more lasting way. You build a strong offensive line, certain components of that line can last a long time, right? Running backs just aren't going to last a long time. That's just the way the position is ultimately built. And so, to me, when I say quarterback maximizer, and again, this is going off of an agent who's done this for years and years and talked to, general managers and head coaches about signing running backs. As money has gone through the roof and NFL offenses have changed for quarterbacks, protecting them more, the league, that's another thing too. The league has moved in a direction to protect what position? Quarterbacks.
Quarterback.
It has moved in what direction to enhance what position? Quarterbacks. Opening up offenses. More points being scored. Spread out offenses. All I hear is general managers complaining about, well, it's hard to draft offensive linemen because the college ranks, the way that college offensive linemen, they never put their hand down, in college anymore. We're always drafting just basically a bunch of pass protectors. And so that's what the NFL gets, is a ton of offensive linemen that are pass protectors. Well, it's all falling into the same trench. And that trench is the league being built around the guys who make the absolute most money, that are the rarest commodities, that are the hardest to find. And that's quarterbacks. And wide receivers are the most direct conduit to maximizing those players. And I'm not just saying number one wide receivers, as I said before, it's number two wide receivers. Michael Smith, you and I talked about it on the phone last night. It's your number three wide receiver. You go and you find someone in the first or second round because you want to have key assets at the third wide receiver position, because you want to then graduate that guy into one of your top two slots. You're constantly thinking about feeding who the quarterback's going to be throwing the ball to. It's just not the same mentality with running backs. So I just go back to us crying and, everybody's, we're all sitting here like, oh, why isn't it the way it used to be? I mean, it's just
Deserves got nothing to do with it.
It ain't like it used to be.
Nothing's like it.
Nothing's like it used to be. Okay, get over it.
Right.
Like it's just changing.
And listen, running backs ain't getting no sympathy from journalists right about now. I'm going through the same thing. Everybody going through it in this day and age. But having said that, Charles, we'll get to some solutions, some possible solutions if they exist. I'm not sure they do. But Charles McDonald, in terms of Saquon and Jacobs, again, who have not signed their tender, so therefore they don't have to show up to anything during training camp because they're not subject to fines because they're not under contract. I can't see a world. They could huff and puff and blow their house down all they want. Le'Veon Bell tweeted, "Why am I trending all of a sudden?" That's because nobody else is going to pull that in their right mind, because you're not getting that $10.1 million back. It's like, I can't see a world in which these dudes exercise the only leverage they have, which is to withhold their services into the season, Charles McDonald, and give up these checks, because you're only going to be a year older, and that money's probably less likely to be there in a year, and you're never going to get that $10.1 million back. That's why Le'Veon out here apologizing for leaving the Steelers in the first place. Right, C-Mac?
Yeah, I mean, if you do some quick math on the franchise tag this year, Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs will be passing on about $600,000 a week, which, look, I don't know how you can really justify that. And look, I tend to stand with these guys on what they're doing. I think Saquon has a really strong case for trying to get a long-term deal, because you just look at the Giants roster. Who else is it going to be? Like, it's not Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers. Like, you're taking flyers on Darren Waller to try to figure something out for your passing game this year. But But still, when you start getting into week one and you start looking at like the actual financial scope of what this is, like week two, you've lost about $1.2 million on the season. That's a tough pill to swallow. So I don't think that these guys are going to hold out. It's just kind of hard when you have such a small window to make this money to kind of throw a season out of the window, even if it's less than what you would like it to be. I would imagine they both end up getting strong arms and coming back to play week one, because you can't just delete 600K checks when you got bills piling up and you're just kind of sitting at home. So it's a tough reality, but it is what it is.
Yo,
Charles, is there Charles Robinson? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Let me tell you a story too about Le'Veon. Okay. Yeah. I was there in November. So, when you don't sign your tag, you got basically until November to get in the building. Right. And then once you pass a certain, right. And then once you pass that date, it's over. You can't come back. Right. Your season's out the window. I was in the Steelers locker room the day Le'Veon had to report. Okay. And I remember it was like me, I think Jeremy Fowler was there. We're just kind of standing there and we're looking at Le'Veon's locker in the locker room. We're like, this fool is not showing up. He ain't showing up. So we're like, what's going to happen? So deadline passes, right? Le'Veon doesn't show. It's clear. It's over. He ain't there. That dude's locker got ransacked by everybody. As we stood there, we watched every player in that locker room go into his locker and steal everything. Everything. It was gone. It was some Lord of the Flies shit, okay? And I was like, look, man, this is your own team, okay? Ain't nobody got any sympathy for you not showing up. He ain't with us. Yeah, no, nobody's got sympathy, okay? If you hold out, if you're Saquon, you might be important, sure. If you're Josh Jacobs, you might be important, but don't show up. Yeah, gonna move on, and they're gonna take your Jordans. Okay, your kicks are gonna be gone out of your locker room. Like they're gonna be, everything was gone. And I remember Jeremy Fowler and I were like, "This is wild. Like this is some crazy stuff. Like this is straight up like." And it was funny because I don't remember who the first player was, but it started slow. It was like somebody kind of wandered by, and they're like, "Well, he ain't showing up." So as soon as one player went in and got something, it was just everybody was. And I was just like, that to me. It was a good analogy for what the NFL is. Yeah. Okay. Like everybody supports you, go get your bag, do what you got to do. But at the end of the day, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Like you're going to go back to where you came from. Okay. And that's how you're going to be treated by NFL teams. So in terms of solutions, you better show up, because the sympathy is only going to be on your side for so long. And eventually the players are going to turn on you. The fan base is going to turn on you. And ultimately, you're going to look back on it and your bank account's going to turn on you, because you're never going to get the money back. I know it sucks.
You're never going to get that money back. But let the record show that Le'Veon did, all it takes is one. Le'Veon did get paid by the Jets. That was obviously a disaster for them, but he did get paid on the back end. Yeah, it was the Jets. But so let me ask you this. Taking us kind of inside these failed negotiations, so they can't get a long-term deal done, but they can still sweeten the franchise tag. They can still agree not to tag them again. There's still ways to get him in. Do you see a compromise, Charles Robinson, between the Giants and Barkley and the Raiders and Jacobs that looks like more than $10.1 million, or some sort of terms and conditions attached? Or is this going to be a stalemate until they decide to show up, if and when they decide to show up?
I mean, the only compromise I think that the players would be interested in is just knowing that, okay, you're letting me go to free agency, like, next offseason. You're not going to give me, you're not going to give me a second tag. It's either a sign me or let me walk situation. So I just don't see either team looking at a player who's an asset and saying, well, we're just going to go ahead and give in at this point and, let this guy walk. Because at that stage, you might as well tell him to come in and trade him at the trade deadline. I don't know. I just don't see it doesn't make a lot of sense. I guess like
I mean,
with
like
the Raiders, I'll
if
say
it's 15 million. Like I don't know what their cap situation is, but like, okay, instead of 10, here's 15. You know, something like that. For
again, it's but what we've all covered this business. At what point have you ever spoken to general managers who go, "Yeah, let me send that message. Let me send that you're going to hold out, you're going to sit out message, and then pay you." And then now other guys are sitting here going, "Okay, well, if we get tagged, we know, this is how it goes in this organization. All we got to do is, sit out."
Yeah,
and,
but I would say you make exceptions for exceptional people because there are holdouts that have worked. Like that's the only tool the players have is to withhold their services. So if Saquon Barkley is this vital to the team as Charles McDonald has outlined, and there's an ongoing negotiation, they just haven't come to terms. He's, again, as you know, technically not a holdout. If the team says, "Hey, we can't give you a long-term deal by rule, but we'll give you, instead of 10.1 million, 15 million for this 1 year, and we promise not to tag you." You telling me Saquon Barkley ain't coming in and everybody wouldn't be like, "Yo, hey, that's business." They came to terms.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know what the rules say about augmenting. As far as I've always known, it's hard and fast once you pass that deadline.
No, you just can't do a long-term deal.
Are you right? You can't do a long-term, but you can augment the amount of money that you pay.
Yeah, the 1 year deal, you can switch it up. Yeah.
See, that's new. That's new to me. I mean, I've never seen that happen. I don't recall that ever happening in all the years that I've covered the league, where a team has said, "All right, we're going to just give you more money than what the tag calls for on a 1 year deal." I could be wrong here, but in my mind, it's unprecedented. I don't ever recall that actually happening. So it's. I mean, I guess you could do that. I suppose it all depends on what your view is on the 2023 season and what you're trying to accomplish. If you're sitting there going, "Hey, we're the Giants. We feel like we have a Super Bowl build, and we got to get this guy in here to maximize this window," then that's different. But as Charles McDonald said, you're already trying to piece together, guys for Daniel Jones to throw to. I don't know that anyone realistically looks at the Giants and believes that this is a Super Bowl window for them right now.
Yeah.
Because that's a 1 year. So let's be real. That's a 1 year solution.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Sure.
So if you're going to come up with a 1 year solution, it speaks to what you think about this year. If Brian Daboll believes this is a Super Bowl team, if Mara and Tisch, if ownership believes this is a Super Bowl winning roster right now, it's built for the Super Bowl, then I understand that. I would say that if any of those individuals came out right now and said, "Yeah, we think we have a Super Bowl caliber team," there would be a lot of people going, probably not. We don't see it right.
We all saw that playoff game. No, you're not.
Yeah.
But the other going back to mixed messages, the one that's always confused me. So I want to talk about some of the we're gonna get the solutions in a second though for this situation that they're in, or see if we can find some. Is the unemployed guys, and so first of all, shout out to Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon like, "Yo, man, I ain't trying to be out here in these streets with y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and take a pay cut, be here, keep riding this thing till the wheels fall off with Joe Burrow in this offense." But the one that's interesting to me is more so Dalvin Cook, because with all due respect to Zeke and Leonard Fournette and Kareem Hunt, who seem like they've tailed off quite a bit, I think Dalvin Cook still has some quality football in him. The Jets situation puzzles me, Charles McDonald, because the Jets have 4 cheap, young running backs. Now, granted, there's one coming off of an ACL, and that's Breece Hall. So they got Michael Carter. They drafted Izzy Abanikanda in the 5th round, I believe, this year. And Bam Knight had flashes last year. I never understood for the life of me, even if you question just how ready Breece Hall is and if he will take time to truly get up to speed, why you would spend money, presumably decent money, which is Dalvin Cook would want, to add him to that running back room, Charles McDonald? Or is that just good old-fashioned media leverage to try to get more out of Miami, who's a little less loaded at running back, Charles McDonald?
It's off-season talk. And I don't even think that you'll see movement on guys like Dalvin and Zeke until training camp like really starts. We get to the swing of things, and you'll maybe you see a team like the Jets, and you get to camp. Breece Hall's not 100% ready, like maybe you thought, because if he's ready, there's no real reason to sign Dalvin Cook. That's your bell cow back for the season. But I think maybe you get into camp and say, okay, well, we have a problem here at backup running backs. Maybe someone's not picking up pass pro like we need to. And, with Aaron Rodgers, every year becomes a go for it year. So, maybe he's a spot where, or the Jets are a spot where Dalvin can come in and slide in. But even then, I would just ask, like, why would the Vikings feel so comfortable releasing Dalvin off a 1,000-yard season? I think when you go back and look at it, it wasn't like as consistent as you would hope. Maybe you could see the wheels kind of falling off towards the end of the season there. So I'm not really sure what that contract is going to look like. I don't think that he has a whole lot of room to stand on. Like, hey, I'm going to go out here and try to get myself like an $8-9 million contract for 1 year from a team. And it sucks because like he is still someone who can provide value, but I think we've seen, like, if you're one of those top guys, but you're not like at the top of your game anymore, teams are going to drag their feet on signing you. There's no rush. We're going to see what we have in camp. If someone's not performing up to right until up to the capabilities that we had expected upon them, then we'll go out and look at an Ezekiel Elliott, a Kareem Hunt, a Dalvin Cook. But we talked before, there's so many guys that are just out there. I mean, even the Falcons, they took Bijan Robinson 8th overall this year, but last year they had Tyler Algier, who they found in the 5th round. And like over the back half of the season, he was one of the most productive running backs in the league. So it's tough. It's a tough game. There's just a whole lot of guys. And look, when it's kind of like basic economics. When you have a whole lot of supply and not a whole lot of spots, I guess the price is going to go down for that.
So, Charles, is there a market for these dudes? Is there a market for the Fournettes, Hunts, Elliott's, and Cooks of the world right now? Because, I mean, like, you got, again, talk about off-season talk, McDonald. You got Cook being like, oh, I'm just taking my time until training camp and, try to decide the best situation for me. And then there was some rumblings about the Commanders looking into Kareem Hunt because I guess the enemy connection. But it's like, is that more like ideal or just spin, or do these guys actually have options at this point? Given the landscape of this position, it would seem like nobody really wants them, is the hard truth.
Well, none of these guys should go just anywhere. I mean, that's the thing too, is it's not just teams looking at this and going, well, we want to see what we have, which I think Charles is absolutely right. They do want to see what they have. They do want to get into camp and figure out what does the depth actually look like in the running back room. But I think it's also the running backs sitting there going, well, I don't want to go into a crowded room. I want to go somewhere where I have opportunity, because I kind of need the Odell Beckham, come up with the Rams, which would have worked. If Odell hadn't gotten hurt in the Super Bowl, Odell would have walked out of that situation with the contract he, was ultimately looking for. And that's what these running backs have to accomplish. Like, if you're a Dalvin Cook, the last thing you want for any of these guys is to be Le'Veon Bell, who, okay, the Steelers decide after that season where he sits out, they go, all right, well, we're going to let you go. We're not going to tag you again. Go ahead, walk. So he picks the Jets, which paid him, a bunch of money, or at least it looked like it up front. And he goes into a situation that was horrible. It was terrible for him. The team around him was terrible. And then what ultimately ends up happening to his career? He goes through, another 3 teams.
Is he boxing?
Yeah, right. He literally goes through another 3 teams over the next 2 years. Has little short-lived stints in Tampa Bay. I think he went to Baltimore for a minute, and then I can't even remember
Kansas City.
Kansas City. He was on Kansas City for a minute. Yeah. Kansas City, Tampa Bay, and Baltimore, and then that's it. And then it's over. And I think are we looking at Dalvin Cook saying that could happen? Hell yeah. Yeah. If Dalvin Cook goes somewhere and he gets into a situation where he gets beat up, it's not a good team, the next team around is going to look at him as an even more middling player. The money's going to be worse. The competition's going to be better. It's it's a very precarious situation that he finds himself in, any of these running backs. And the last thing you want is just to choose wrong, because you have a small window to operate with here. So I do believe that the players are trying to find the best possible position for themselves for 1 year
at their price, and at their price.
Yeah. I mean, for Dalvin, I think it plays into it. Zeke somewhat. Kareem Hunt probably not.
Could he end up back in Dallas? Could Zeke end up back in Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, I think he could.
It makes sense.
I don't. It does. It does.
Sense,
as Charles says, it does make sense. I mean, it's you got Tony Pollard, who's going to play out, this season on a 1-year deal. The dynamic would be similar to what it was last year. The play calling will be, you would think, a little more different and play into having that rotation, because Kellen Moore's out the door. You got, Mike McCarthy's already said he really wants to focus more on having a consistent running game. And there are friends there. He has support, both the front office still likes him, owner, Jerry Jones still likes him. I think the coaching staff still likes him. He's a known commodity. So, and as you brought up, like with Bieniemy, it's the same situation for like a Kareem Hunt. At some point, these guys are, if they can't have their pick of the litter, they're trying to go somewhere where they're known, where there's a friend, where they have a lifeline. And I wouldn't be surprised if Zeke ends up back in Dallas. But I do think that even for the teams, it makes sense to get through some of camp, figure out where the injuries are going to occur, because running backs are going to get hurt on NFL teams, and that's going to create some opportunities. And then that's when some of these teams will become buyers. So I don't think it's not like a D-Hop thing right now, right? I mean, it's not like, I would be more shocked if these running backs sign right now than I was with DeAndre Hopkins ending up with Tennessee. And I would be absolutely stunned if they got D-Hop money. I don't think there's any chance in hell where they land a contract where you're like, wow. Yeah.
All right, so let's wrap this up on a positive note. Just for some balance here, because I know I've been acting like the league and shitting on these running backs. I love them; they're all great players. When Austin Eckler first announced that he wanted to seek a trade, I was like, bro, it's a cold world out there. Ain't nobody checking for Austin Eckler on the trade market. And sure enough, they weren't, because as he pointed out, the Chargers weren't just going to give him away. He wanted a new contract. That was probably the first example this offseason that this is going to be a very difficult one for running backs. But what are the solutions to this, Charles McDonald, if any? Like, what can these running backs do other than tweet through it? Like, some have thrown out the idea of a running back sub-union. I don't know what that would look like.
Build a time machine. Build a time machine and go back and switch positions.
I guess. What can they do? I mean, do younger running backs, do they actually hold out earlier, Charles McDonald, before they get to this point? Do they beat the teams to it? Like, how can the running backs take the power back? Shout out to Rage Against the Machine.
I don't really know if like holding out before you get to this point is necessarily a solution either, because you just start getting fined, right? Because I would assume at that point you're under contract. So every day you don't show up, it's a pretty serious fine. Like a fine serious enough to the point, I don't remember the exact number, but like Deshaun Watson was still showing up with the Texans, even though we knew that was over, because he didn't want to take on whatever daily fine he had in that training camp. But I don't think there's actually a solution with the way things are set up. I don't think it's possible. But if we're going to stretch the imagination and actually give our guys some relief here, there's two ways you could do it. One that people would never, ever go for: abolish the draft entirely as a whole concept. Let these guys hit the bidding wars the second they finish their college careers. And I think that you would see a lot of contracts go up, because just imagine if a 20-year-old Bijan Robinson could just walk into NFL free agency right now, what kind of contract would he get? That doesn't seem like it's ever going to happen, but maybe there's a way down the road where future generations of running backs can benefit from like shorter rookie contracts on the CBA. So like instead of a 4+1 deal, maybe we're looking at a 2+1 deal. You can hit free agency for, by the time you're 23 or 24 instead of 26 or 27, like in Saquon Barkley's case. But again, like it wouldn't just have to be running backs; it would have to be everybody. So
the problem is the tag. It's really the tag.
Right.
The tag is the bane of everybody's existence. Yeah.
Right. The tag is a big problem. And also just the nature of the position. Like I said before, there's certain guys, and I think another part of this conversation that needs to be, acknowledged is a lot of this is for guys at the top, guys like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, guys who were tweeting about this yesterday. Some of those guys, they're playing in like their NFL ready bodies at like 19 years old. It's not most guys, but there's a couple of guys that are really like that. So, you're playing in a body that's capable to take on that punishment, but you're playing for free in college and you're drafted and you're on a cost control contract because the salaries got nuked in the 2011 CBA. And then if you're a first round pick, you can get the option and then you can get franchise tag. It's tough to even get to a bidding war. So maybe, and by the time you get to a bidding war, no one wants you. So maybe shorter contracts, if that's a thing that the players could, galvanize around. But other than that, I don't really see how you fix this with how things are currently set up.
Other than the DeLorean, Charles, any ideas?
I don't know. Hope that there's a renaissance. I mean, hope that, sometimes I think about like Ohio State and Michigan, right? And how did Michigan get to the point now where they're going to be national title contenders in 2023? They became a running team, right? They were like, hey, we're going to be a power running team. We're going to be dominant. We're going to have two running backs capable of rushing for 100 yards in a game. We're gonna push to try and be a 200, 300 yard rushing team every time out. And the NFL it's a cyclical league. However, it seems to cycle in decades, not in years. So, I mean, do we get to a point where, people start to think, well, all right, we're now a finesse, we're a passing league. That has resulted in defenses being lighter, quicker. Well, how are light, quick defenses vulnerable? They're vulnerable when you have power running games. You have offensive lines that could, beat them up and tear them apart. And you get into the fourth quarter and they're all on their heels. They're all winded, but the problem with the NFL is it reacts to its feeder system. The NFL changes based on the talent that is, basically procured beneath it. And, you'd have to basically have really a renaissance in college where it's just like all these powerful, college programs become running programs rather than passing programs. I don't know. I personally don't think there needs to be a solution. I think that's bullshit. I think the NFL is liquid. It goes where it's supposed to go. It shapes how it's supposed to shape. People are going to complain about it, whatever. Like, that's fine. But the NFL will do what it's going to do. It's going to be what it has to be. And we'll, 20 years from now, we could all be going like, oh my God, it's so boring. It's just a bunch of running backs now and scoring's down. And, we're once again talking about, how do we get more excitement back into the game? It'll cycle out of this at some point. It might take longer than maybe it normally does, but this is how the league works. Remember, there was a time where, it was all running backs, right? And like Johnny Unitas was like, oh my God, this guy's throwing the football. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it was literally nothing but...
watch. There was this NFL Films video I used to watch with my uncle all the time. It was just about the great running backs in NFL history. It was the glamour position. To say it's falling on hard times is certainly an understatement. Charles, I'm with you, man. Wait. Maybe Saquon Barkley at the best. Go ahead.
Before we get out here, how about this?
Yeah, go ahead.
How about
light bulb?
It becomes more of, why isn't there more hybridization? Okay, like why don't? Okay, so if you're going to be a running back, fine, but really lean more into what the agents are leaning into. Don't call yourself a running back. You're a weapon. You're an offensive weapon.
You want to be a wide back?
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, for real. I mean, maybe sit there and go, okay, well, what I want to be is I want to be Deebo Samuel, okay, at his peak, where he's being used most effective. I want to be someone who can be an elite wide receiver and an elite running back at the same time.
But wait a second. But hold on.
That's
Chuck.
more of a realistic change.
If I recall correctly, though, tell me if I might be misremembering this. At one point, that was all fine and dandy a couple of years ago when the Niners were using him like that and he was breaking football. And then when it came time to contract negotiations, he wanted to get traded at one point because they weren't trying to treat him like the weapon that he was and pay him for being a wide receiver
and where do you tag him?
Weren't they holding it against him?
If you get a player that is let's say you get a true 50-50 split, it's a player who truly spends half their time at each position. Of course, the team's going to go, no, we got to make sure you play him more at running back because we're going to tag him as a running back. We're not going to tag him as a wide receiver. It's cheaper to tag him.
But you know what's funny? What's the other position that happened? What you're saying, it was either for All Pro, Pro Bowl, or either the franchise tag. Was it defensive end outside linebacker? Where one of where guys want to be categorized? Was that the position that
Jimmy Graham? It happened to Jimmy Graham.
That tag? Jimmy Graham, yes.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham,
tight wide receiver.
Khalil Mack. It was like, okay, well, is he? Do you tag him as a defensive end, or you tag him as an outside linebacker? Yeah, I mean, it's of course, but honestly, if we're really looking for solutions, just get rid of the tag. Like if you're players, you just go, let's just get rid of the tag.
It's the tag.
All we gotta do is just let's take away control. We got a new union head. And let's get rid of the tag. Let's no longer have first-round contracts that have a fifth-year option. So it's a straight 4-year deal. If that, and truth be told, that would be really what solves this, quote unquote, solves this for running backs.
All problems.
Across
the board,
all
every problem.
Take away the fifth-year option and take away the franchise tag. We will no longer have this discussion. The free market will reign, and it will allow running backs to get to free agency or put teams in a position where they got to pay them when the running backs are like 25, 26. Much different situation if you take away that control.
Restricting movement. You got the draft, which I love, but to Charles McDonald's point, you got the draft. You can't have the draft and the franchise tag. It's just way too much control, which means it'll never happen. I was going to say maybe Saquon Barkley had the best commentary of all with a simple 5-word tweet about the situation. It is what it is. that might be the moral of the story. Charles Robinson, Charles McDonald, I appreciate you guys. Franchise players, both of you. Talk to y'all later.
Peace.
Hey, thanks so much for kicking it with your main man, Michael Smith. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, but also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Rate it, review it, tell your friends about it. Oh, and be sure to follow me on social media.